Hello and welcome to the Canada News with your host Gurdwara. Now let's take a look on the headlines. Massive blaze destroys prominent Mississauga restaurant. Canada has now signaled that it will lift some of its austerity measures once the situation in Corona improves. Ontario Premier Doug Ford announces COVID-19 vaccine process in the province. Now news in detail. A massive fire Sunday night has destroyed a prominent Mississauga restaurant. Fire crews were called to the Paramount Fine Foods location at the Erin Mills town centre around 6 p.m. When they arrived, heavy smoke could be seen billowing from the roof of the restaurant, and firefighters were soon forced into a defensive position to try and bring the blaze under the control. One of the customers came in and said, "Fire on the roof, fire on the roof," said Mike Cashani, the owner of the Erin Mills location. "So we sent everybody out. Initially a 2-alarm fire. It was subsequently upgraded to 3 alarms as more equipment was brought in to help battle into the blaze. The roof of the restaurant eventually collapsed. Both police and fire officials said there are no injuries and everyone who was in the structure has been accounted for at this time." Canada has now signaled that it will lift some of its austerity measures once the situation in Corona improves. The National Advisory Committee has also almost agreed to remove the 3-day hotel quarantine requirement, and the federal government is seeking suggestions from the provinces.
That's right, Heather. And I also want to be just clear off the top that this is yet another situation where we have an expert panel coming out with some recommended changes, some different ideas from the rules that are currently in place. But in the short term, the current rules remain in place. So anybody who has some travelers going to and fro in their lives should understand that nothing's changing yet. Nevertheless, let's take a look at kind of what this latest advice is, because I have to say, Heather, they are muddying the waters in a number of areas that have been the subject of a lot of discussion in terms of how passengers, returning passengers in particular, should be screened. They weigh in on how much testing is actually really required, how long different types of travelers should be isolating, and whether travelers who are now fully or partly, I guess you could also add, vaccinated could be subject to a different set of rules, providing the government could get some kind of a vaccine passport or certification system up and running. Of course, at this point, it doesn't have that. But as you say, the recommendation getting the most attention is the one to end the mandatory 3-day supervised quarantine for air travelers that requires them to go to designated hotels. Now, we have heard complaint after complaint about these hotels, how expensive they are for starters, how unpleasant they've been for some people, that there's been occasional crowding, bad food, how some people don't even feel they're safe because we've had some isolated reports of people being assaulted, and in a couple of situations, people who believed that they may have caught COVID from their hotel stay. And the other complaint about it is that it doesn't treat all returning travelers equally, because if you return to a land border, you don't have to go to one of these hotels. And so what we've seen is that air travelers are just flying to a nearby US airport and then walking or taking some kind of a taxi service across the border to just avoid the whole quarantine hotel experience. Others were prepared to pay the $3,000 fine, so they didn't have to go there either. And so that's led a lot of people to conclude that they're just not effective. Now we have this expert advice suggesting they could be scrapped. Well, it was interesting. Even earlier in the day, Prime Minister Trudeau was asked whether quarantine hotels should be scrapped, and he kind of stuck to the government's message all along. Look, guys, not the time to be talking about travel. Take a listen.
Ontario Premier Doug Ford announces COVID-19 vaccine process in the province. The Premier announced that the gap between food management for the elderly and adult is being reduced. He said the gap between Pfizer, BioNTech and Moderna vaccine is being reduced to 4 weeks.
Ontario's vaccine rollout remains our best defense against COVID-19 and our best path to getting ahead of this terrible virus. For months, thousands of dedicated people have been working around the clock to get vaccines into arms, and have done an incredible job. We have the infrastructure and we have an incredible team in place. And as of today, we're ahead of the schedule we set, with over 65% of adults in Ontario having received at least their first shot. We have now administered over 8.5 million doses. You think of that? Those are staggering figures. In fact, earlier today, our officials revealed that when compared against Israel, the UK, and the US, the speed of Ontario's rollout, once we got steady supply, is being amongst the best in the entire world. That's thanks to each of you signing up to get your vaccines. And it's thanks to thousands of people working at the vaccine clinics. Because of your efforts, we're now in a position to accelerate second doses in Ontario. This is great news, and I know many of you have been waiting for. As we manage supply, we're beginning with our most vulnerable, the people who need the most protection first. Starting on Monday, second doses will be offered to anyone over 80 years, followed by anyone over 70 years old, beginning the week of June the 14th. Once we've provided more protection to our most vulnerable, we'll begin offering Ontarians their second doses on a first in, first out basis. That means we'll expand second doses based on the date you received your first. As we do, we're reducing the time between your first and second dose.
Sylvia Jones, head of the Corona Vaccine Distribution Task Force in the Ontario, said the province would provide a second dose of the AstraZeneca vaccine from May 31st. He also said those who were vaccinated 10 weeks ago can take a second dose. He also claimed that if the province continued to receive adequate supplies of the vaccine by the end of the summer, the people of the province will all be vaccinated.
So the second doses of AstraZeneca that at this point are set to expire on May 31st, we wanted to offer those to people who wished to have a shortened time period of the 10 weeks, which is why we were very specific about saying if you had your first dose of AstraZeneca between May 10th and May 19th, you have an opportunity, if you would like, to receive that AstraZeneca sooner, that second dose sooner. It is a very limited supply, but because the AstraZeneca had been distributed throughout Ontario at this point, when Health Canada put a pause on using AstraZeneca for first doses, we had to return that AstraZeneca to the 3 zones in Ontario, the 3 communities, Kingston, Toronto, and Windsor-Essex, that had offered the original first dose. So it was a matter of moving them back into those 3 communities, making sure that they still had the cold storage chain, that they were safe. We've done that, and that work is ongoing, and as soon as we get the approval that they continue to be of the highest quality, we make sure that pharmacies in Toronto, Kingston, and Windsor, Essex are getting it. I know people are excited. I know that a lot of people want that second dose sooner, but it is a very limited supply that we are offering up to make sure that we use all available doses. Thank you.
Yeah, just to add, in Solicitor General, it's March the 10th to the 19th. I think you accidentally said May the 10th. So anyways, just want to reinforce that, March the 10th to March the 19th. If you ended up getting an AstraZeneca shot, then you're eligible. And again, that's Kingston, Windsor, and Toronto, because that's the time frame, the 10 to 12 week time frame. And as we get more, we're going to start rolling it out based on the dates that the doctors prescribe.
Next question. The Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, and the Deputy Prime Minister, Christine Freeland, have announced the Child Benefit Scheme. Under this, every child under the age of 6 will be given $1,200 for additional family expenses. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Christine Freeland also discussed the virtual program.
A big shout out to Deputy Prime Minister Freeland, an outstanding finance minister, and someone who gets what it's like to juggle kids and a career. Let me also recognize Alison Venditti for starting the Moms at Work group and for bringing us together today. This is an awesome opportunity to talk with moms and talk about the challenges we're facing. So I'm really looking forward to getting into it. But first, I want to talk about the CCB. When you have kids, you expect some curveballs, but you don't expect a global pandemic. So with the extra expenses of raising a family during this crisis, lots of parents needed more help. So on top of the regular amount, we're increasing the Canada Child Benefit for kids under 6. That means up to $1,200 in support this year, extra per child under 6. Today, the first of these boosted payments will be going out. Que vous utilisiez votre chèque de l'ACE pour acheter une tablette pour l'école à la maison ou pour mettre des bons aliments sur la table, cet argent est là pour vous. But not only are you making sure bills get paid and helping your kids make sense of this crisis, you're also trying to juggle all of that with work. And for too many mothers, this year has meant the heartbreaking choice to leave a career. On ne doit pas laisser cette pandémie faire reculer les gains durement acquis par les mères. C'est pourquoi on fait des investissements historiques dans les services de garde d'enfants et d'apprentissage de petite enfance. We're building a Canada-wide early learning and childcare system. This plan will cut fees in half by the end of next year, and in 5 years, we'll reach an average of $10 a day care across the country. Helping parents balance work and family isn't just the right choice, it's the smart one. We're building a stronger economy for everyone, and that's something that I've had long conversations with and actually been really inspired by an extraordinary leader.
Procurement Minister of Canada Anita Anand briefs on the corona vaccine supply process in Canada. She said more than 26 million doses of the vaccine arrived in the country yesterday. Of these, 22 million doses have been sent to different provinces for vaccination of adults. She also said that the delivery of the vaccine has been confirmed by the end of June.
As of yesterday, more than 26 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines have arrived in Canada. Also, as of yesterday, more than 22 million of those doses have been administered by the provinces and territories to eligible youth and adults. Between now and the end of June, we have confirmed delivery dates for a total of at least 15 million more doses from 3 suppliers. So we are well on our way to ensuring that there is sufficient vaccine for every eligible Canadian to receive at least 1 dose of vaccine before the end of June, and that every eligible Canadian will have access to a second dose before the end of the summer. Now for information relating to individual vaccine suppliers. Pfizer, 2.4 million doses from Pfizer will arrive each week over 5 weeks in June, and 9 million more doses will arrive in the month of July. Moderna. As mentioned yesterday, Moderna has provided an updated delivery schedule for its vaccine doses for the first part of June. We can expect 500,000 doses to arrive in Canada in 2 shipments starting next week. In addition to this, there will be 1.5 million doses arriving in the country the week of June 14th. I would like to be clear on this point. Moderna assures us that there will be millions more doses arriving in Canada before the end of June. Nous continuons à travailler avec la société pour établir des dates de livraison et des quantités précises. Nous vous tiendrons au courant de ces détails dès que nous les aurons, comme nous l'avons toujours fait.
The third wave of the COVID-19 pandemic is now fading across Canada. However, due to the resurgence of the virus, many areas are still struggling. This revelation is based on the new federal epidemic modeling, according to Dr. Theresa Tam, Chief Public Health Officer. Although Canada's third wave has declined, the number of new cases has continued to decline, but the time has not come to relax public health restrictions. There is still a rise in the cases involving the virus in Manitoba. Modeling shows that there is still much to be done in the province to control the coronavirus. Less than half of the cases reported at the top of third wave in the mid-April are now down. Less than 3,400 cases were reported daily in the last 7 days. There are indications that the increase in immunizations and restrictions imposed across Canada is proving to be very effective and has led to decline in cases.
There have been 423,054 cases of COVID-19 in Canada, including 12,777 deaths. Nationally, there are over 71,540 active cases across the country, And over the past week, labs across Canada have tested an average of over 80,000 people daily, with 8% testing positive. Yesterday, 6,499 cases were reported nationally. In addition, there were over 1,370 new cases reported for Saturday and Sunday. So this brings the average daily case count to over 6,415 cases for the past week. The number of people experiencing severe illness continues to increase. Over the past 7 days, there were on average over 2,680 individuals with COVID-19 being treated in Canadian hospitals, including about 530 in critical care, and an average of over 92 deaths were reported each day. Yesterday, the Government of Canada announced some good news about vaccines.
The National Advisory Committee has issued its new guidance on the COVID-19 vaccine. The NACI says the second dose should be taken as soon as possible. Earlier, the NICI had recommended that the second dose of the COVID-19 vaccine be delayed for up to 4 months. But the latest decision comes at the time when many provinces are already rushing for a second dose. The NICA said in a recent release that a second dose should be given as soon as the supply of the COVID-19 vaccine increases in Canada. Preferences should be given to those who are at high risk of getting sick or dying from COVID-19. The NICI also said the second dose could be delayed for a maximum of 16 weeks due to the increased supply shortages. It is also being said that the first dose provides some protection from the disease, but now it is the time to give the second dose to people faster. We are now approaching the point where almost all adults and adolescents are receiving the first dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. Chair Dr. Caroline Kwok-Tan said in a statement, federal government sends $25 million in aid to Palestinians affected by recent violence in Gaza. International Development Minister Karina Gould says Ottawa will ensure the aid is provided to the affected Palestinians. Karina Gould also explained how the money would be distributed.
$25 million that I announced today has 3 parts to it. The first is $10 million for the immediate humanitarian needs, like psychosocial support for children in particular, immediate food assistance, and health response. The next is $10 million that will be used over the coming weeks and months for kind of initial reconstruction efforts, and then $5 million for peace building efforts. And so we know that it's quite soon after the conflict and there'll still be a needs assessment, but this is an important response in the immediacy following the cessation of hostilities. $10 million that will go to trusted humanitarian partners with whom we have longstanding relationships in Gaza. So some of it will go to the United Nations UNRWA, through the World Food Program, through the Red Cross and the United Nations UNFPA, as well as the World Health Organization for that immediate humanitarian response. And then for the additional 15, that will really come from the needs assessment that we see over the coming week. Yeah, so I mean, Canada recognizes Hamas as a terrorist entity, and we do not engage with Hamas. The work that we do with UNRWA is in support of providing basic services to people on the ground in Gaza and other Palestinian refugees in the area. We have enhanced due diligence in the region to ensure just that. And these are longstanding partnerships that we've had, and we have protocols in place to ensure that that support goes to vulnerable Palestinians, and it does not in any way support the work of Hamas. Well, we've had those protocols in place for years, and we do that vetting process, and that's the enhanced due diligence that I talk about in the region that has been integral to the work that we've been doing in the Palestinian territories for years. Of course, we will be coordinating with our allies and partners in the region, USAID, as well as European countries and other like-minded, as we go through the reconstruction process and the humanitarian assistance in Gaza. And as I said, we're still going through that needs assessment process. So, we will, as Canada always does, contribute our fair share when it comes to humanitarian responses. So I will be engaging with colleagues and counterparts in that response. But those assessments are still to come.
So that's all we have in this bulletin. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more updated news.